In early 2019, my life felt complete. I had had everything go essentially to plan. My high school sweetheart husband and I had dated all through high school and college. We had attended the same law school and had gotten married after graduation. We had been through a couple of bumps together. My mom had passed away when I was 22. I was ill during school, and we had some problems with fertility, but we had come out the other side. We lived in what I envisioned to be my forever home with our 3.5-year-old son and 6-month-old daughter. Life was busy but stable. I was content, I was happy, and I was ready to settle into my happily ever after. One night, after several weeks where things had just felt a little off, my husband confided in me that he had come to the hard realization that he is gay. And with those words, my whole world changed in an instant. I was hurt. I was confused. I was angry, very, very angry. I felt like the rug had been ripped out from under the life that I had worked so hard to build. I had been through hard things before, but I had always been able to put my head down and work hard and stick to my plan, and everything would always turn out okay. But this was different. There was no amount of self-determination or hard work that was going to be able to save my marriage. And I was devastated. I didn't want to get a divorce. I didn't want to be a single parent, but I had no choice in the matter. I dragged myself to a therapist to try to make sense of just how completely my life was crumbling around me. And she told me that I would need to grieve not only my marriage, but also the future that I had envisioned for myself. This was scary to me. The possibilities for this second act of my life were endless. Would I get remarried? When? To who? Would I have stepchildren? Would I have to move? How would I go from two incomes to one income? And most of all, how would my children deal with all these changes? I thought at this point in my life, I knew what my crazy looked like. I had my 2 kids and my busy working mom life. But what kind of crazy would this new life involve that I couldn't even imagine yet? A crazy mother-in-law, an ex-partner, stepchildren that didn't like me. There were just endless things that I could face in my future that I had no idea, and it was very overwhelming. The year that followed involved a lot of self-reflection. I had to think about what was I going to carry forward with me and what was I going to leave behind. And in doing so, what surprised me was the major thing that I needed to confront was my own perfectionism. I realized that I had gotten through a lot of things before in my life by essentially pretending and putting out into the world that everything was okay. And that had helped. I mean, that had gotten me through a lot of things before. It had worked. When I was in law school and my mom passed away, I just put my head down, worked hard, and I made law review that semester. But I didn't realize until I was facing my divorce that having this perfect marriage and this perfect life was actually a huge part of my identity. And I wasn't ready to give up this identity. I also realized that, to my horror, I had to not just accept the end of my marriage and accept losing this identity. I also had to tell everybody about it. And so, to gain some control over the situation, I found myself creating a sort of divorce elevator pitch. And it essentially was designed for me to tell people, number one, this isn't my fault. And number two, I'm doing everything right here. After a while, I used this over and over. It was working, but it got tedious, and it got harder and harder to just give my boilerplate response and keep that facade. One day I was in the elevator going into work with one of my female colleagues, and she told me a story about her kids and asked, how are your kids doing? And that day I had reached just a limit. It had been a hard week, and I just couldn't pretend anymore. So I answered her and said, they're okay. Well, actually, I don't know. I'm going through a divorce. My husband told me he's gay. And I just blurted it out. I know she was probably only expecting a polite chit chat answer, and I dropped a truth bomb on her, but it felt good. I literally abandoned my elevator pitch in an elevator, but it allowed me to just take a deep breath and exhale a little bit, and it felt really good. I realized in that moment that I had even tried to be perfect in my divorce. And not only was that not sustainable, it didn't even really make any sense. Divorce is messy. Life is messy. That's okay. So in the coming months, I started to be a little bit freer about how I talked about what I was going through and when and with who. And what happened surprised me. A lot of women that I knew started to confide in me about things that they were going through in their own life that I had no idea about. And I was starting to make more honest and genuine connections with them. I also had new opportunities come my way that, quite frankly, would never have come up if I hadn't been more honest about what I was going through. For example, at one point, I was talking to one of my divorced colleagues, sharing my fears about how I was going from having two incomes to being a one income family and how scary it was. And that conversation led directly to an opportunity for me to teach as an adjunct professor at UNC Law. Once I stopped holding on so tightly to perfection, more and more questions started to surface for me. Questions like, who am I really? Without having to adhere to a certain plan, what do I even like? Do I really like this or that? Or was that just what fit in with the life that I had created and the future I envisioned, the plan that I had? I was now free to answer those questions and to try to figure this out. I finally just admitted to myself that I don't know who I am. I don't know what my future looks like. And I never will. I mean, it's a process. And the reality is that no one really knows what the future looks like. Today, my life already looks a little different. I redecorated some parts of my house, bought some pink things. I stopped sending out perfectly posed holiday cards every year. I, have a little bit more of a messy house and a messy life, but there have also been a lot of new spaces created in my life for exciting new things. I started teaching, and I also started writing, which is something that I always wanted to do, but I wasn't sure that I could do it well. And so that was one thing. I wasn't going to try it if I couldn't do it well. And also, I didn't know what the point was because it didn't seem to fit in with the life plan that I had. But now I know that just wanting to do these things, things that I like, things that are exciting or fun, is enough of a reason to do them. Overall, I've realized that there is no prize in life for doing everything perfectly or doing everything to plan. All that matters is being happy. And so now my focus is just on being happy.